Last week, we talked about craft shows, and I had mentioned that you're going to need to be able to take credit and debit cards. So exactly how are you going to do that? That's what we're going to talk about today. Welcome to Working at Woodworking Podcast. My name is Roger Kugler, and we're going to take a deep dive into point of sale systems, POS. There's a lot involved here. This is not an all-inclusive, exhaustive study of point of sale systems, but I think I can give you some good ideas to get you started. So when you go to a craft show, you're going to need a few things, even before we talk about POS systems. First thing you're going to need is a cell phone. Most people have cell phones, so that shouldn't be an issue. You're going to need a cell phone with a good battery, something that you can get 6-8 hours out of at least. Some people carry one of those battery backup systems that you can just plug in and basically charge your cell phone battery from another battery. Not a bad idea. A lot of craft shows are not going to have 120 volt VAC available. So work out your cell phone before we go any further. And if you have an older cell phone, like I do, the one that sends up smoke signals, you might want to think about upgrading, because a lot of these systems we're going to talk about are going to use your cell phone, and if it's an older phone, you just might have some problems. The second thing you're going to need is conductivity. Can you connect to the outside world with your cell phone? This is where you read the instructions, the fine details with the show's application, and they may list this is a poor area for cell phone coverage from some carriers. Do some investigation, because in essence, if you can't connect with something, you're not going to be able to process credit cards easily. Some venues will offer Wi-Fi. Some companies offer Wi-Fi hotspots in particularly urban areas, so you might be able to hook up that way. But you need to confirm that you can get a signal and you can use your cell phone. Landlines, yeah, right. Who uses landlines anymore? And the third thing you're going to need is the point of sale system itself. And that's what we're going to take a deep dive into right now. You need to do your research. There are dozens and dozens, probably hundreds of ways that you can do this. Some are very popular. I'm sure you know the names. Others you have never heard of because they didn't exist 5 minutes ago. So you're really going to have to devote some time to research. When you're doing your research, one of the first things that pop up is cost. How much will this cost me per transaction? And very importantly, are there other fees associated, particularly monthly fees? Some do, some don't. Are there hidden fees? Well, if they told you right out front about these fees, they wouldn't be called hidden fees. Unfortunately, you may not know about these until you're waist deep into the system, having used it for a few months, and then these things start to pop up. But through our research, hopefully we can weed those out. Is there a contract involved with this system? Mostly no. At least that's what my research has found. I think contracts for things like this are kind of a 20th century thing. We don't see those with cell phone usage or a lot of the technology, social media, everything internet type thing anymore. Do they include a terminal in the service? Some type of card reader? Some do. Some charge a nominal fee. Will you need a printed receipt to give to your customers? Most of these systems operate off of email. You email the customer a receipt. I mean, I was in Harbor Freight the other day, and by the time I got home, there was an email for my receipt sitting there, even though they gave me a paper receipt. A lot of the stores do this now. Lowe's, will do this, which is very, very convenient for record keeping, by the way. So if you need a printed receipt or you want to give that to your customer, then you're going to need to purchase a printer separately. They're not horribly expensive. You could probably get a decent one for under $100, but that's kind of another layer that you're going to have to add in. When are your deposits available? This one you may need to dig. Some of these companies make the deposits available within 1 business day. Some will put a hold on any deposits for 7, 14, 21, especially if you are a new customer or you are a new business. Different vendors handle this differently. You need to ask questions. And there's a little wrinkle to this that we'll talk about next. Will this point of sale system work with your phone? Again, if you have an older phone, dig into the details. You might find that your phone is just right there on the cusp, and maybe it's time to upgrade that phone. And I think one of the best pieces of advice I could give you is whatever you're looking at, do a search on social media. I came across one that was offered by a bank that it looked beautiful on the website, very reasonably priced, bells and whistles. But when I checked the online reviews, particularly this was on Facebook, there were dozens and dozens and dozens of complaints about this. So I'm not even going to mention that product. So after you have an idea of who you're going to research or go with, you're going to need to collect your information whenever you sign up. And this is pretty simple stuff. They will need your name, your company's name, address, phone number, bank accounts, social security number, or your EIN number if you applied for that federally. And then you go through the verification process. I know that the vendor that I used signed up for 20 years ago. It was impressive. I mean, I've had background checks that I don't know if were quite as thorough as what they did. But they verified the address, they verified the phone number, they verified the business name. They were, I thought, very, very thorough about this. And I think some of this comes out of 9/11, whenever they went through and were fighting terrorists and the funding of terrorists in particular. I remember in the early 2000s, there was a lot of effort put into stopping money flow from the U.S. to overseas terrorist organizations. And that really, really affected banks and credit card transactors and everything across the board. So I think that's where we're getting at. Just be prepared that this is not necessarily a 5-minute job. Do not do this the day before you leave for your first arts and crafts show. You'll probably run into problems. Okay, I have 7 options for point of sale systems that I'll talk about. You choose what might be best for you, and of course, explore other options that I haven't mentioned. Option number 1, your bank or credit union. Wherever you're banking now, they may have a system already in place. It might be cheaper, it might be easier, and it might be the perfect solution for you. Don't overlook that. If you're happy with your bank, this may be the perfect route to go. If you're not happy with your bank or you've had trouble with them, maybe you want to look elsewhere. Or maybe you just want some diversity in your money flow. Now, there are 2 flavors, shall we say, of point of sale systems. There are merchant services and there are third-party processors. A merchant service is big. This would be a bank that is servicing credit card transactions. And there's a couple different layers that you have to jump through. I'm not going to talk about those. If you are running $100,000 a year, you have a retail store or something like that, that would be what you would use. I'm going to talk about third-party processors. These are basically a group, an organization, a company that has a merchant service account that is processing everyone else's transactions. They're lighter, they're a little more nimble, and typically the cost and the hassle is a little less than dealing with a direct merchant service. The first one, I know most of you have probably heard of this, Square. Not to be confused with Squarespace. That's a different company. But Square has been around for a long, long time. I'm sure you have been to a restaurant, a deli, a coffee shop, some place that uses Square as their only point of sale system. If you've ever had to use a little pen or your finger to sign your name, that was probably Square. They have invested a lot of money, time, and effort into going after that market, and I think they've done a very good job. I know several businesses that use Square. No real complaints. There's always hiccups about one thing or the other, but overall, the people I've talked to seem to be very happy with the program. Now, you don't need that big computerized cash drawer, things like that. You're just going to a craft show. So the only thing you need is a card reader. And with Square, you download a free app onto your cell phone through either Google Play Store or the Apple Store and install that, and you will get a card reader. Connect the app to the Square website, to your account that you've set up, and easy peasy. Somebody comes up, they're buying a bowl that you turned, it's $100. They hand you the card, you put it in the little card reader, boom, you're done. How much is that going to cost you? Well, the information that I got off their website this past week was 2.6% plus 10 cents transaction fee. Now that is for a swipe, a tap, or a chip. What in the world is that? Well, we go a little deeper, and I'm sure you've seen this or you do this yourself. There's a little magnetic strip on the back of your card, or there used to be. And that mag strip, you would swipe through the card reader, gathers the information, and the electronic magic happens, and you collect their money, or if you're making a purchase, it's deducted from your account. The tap is relatively new technology. It's using near-field communication. What the heck is that? Well, it's basically a radio frequency that operates on a very short range. We're talking like an inch, maybe 2 inches. So you've seen people, or you do this yourself. I'm a bit of a Luddite, so I haven't adopted this yet. But they just go up and tap their card onto the credit card machine, and boom, magic happens. No touchy, no feely. It's done. It's over with. Pretty neat technology. The chip is relatively new also, well, last few years, and that has that little gold, looks like a circuit board in your card, and you insert it into the machine, and it gathers the information, and either a credit or a debit occurs. And that's referred to as dipping. The swipe cards, the magnetic cards, are disappearing. In fact, no, I don't think any new cards are even being issued with that. They all have the chip, and you can also get into the tap, which is set up through Google Pay, Venmo, Apple Pay, so on and so forth. The important thing is you need that technology to be able to accept those types of transactions. Now that 2.6 rate, that's good if they swipe, tap, or dip. If you have to enter a card manually, which will occur, either someone has an older card or they have a Visa or MasterCard gift card. They don't have this technology. There's just numbers there. So you're going to need to do a manual entry. Manual entries cost a little bit more. Square is charging 3.5% plus 15 cents a transaction. In fact, you will find that some of these vendors will charge different rates depending on how the information was transacted. There's a one rate for a dip, one rate for a tap, one rate for a chip, and one rate for a manual entry. Isn't this fun? Some vendors don't even mess with that. It's like one rate for the swipe, tap, or chip, and another rate for a manual entry. That's referred to as an NCP, November Charlie Papa. No card present. There's a little more risk there. You don't know where that card came from. You don't know the person who's giving it to you. Likewise with the merchant bank in the back end, they need to kind of protect themselves. They charge a little higher rate because there's just simply more fraud involved in that. Square has no monthly fees. You sign up for this and boom, the only fees they're collecting is the individual transaction fees. The equipment, that little card reader, it's free. If you need additional, they're $10. So how do you get started with this? Well, you go to Square and you hit the little button to sign up. And you go in, they'll ask you 20 million questions, you fill out all the information, and they will send you the card reader, and you are good to go. This is where you will input your bank account information, and of course they go through the verification process to determine that you are who you say you are, and then you're ready to go. Funds are available in one business day from Square. Now, when I called and talked to them about this, they said if you're at a craft show on a Saturday, they will process it on Monday. It might not show up on your account until Tuesday. They say it's one day is 36 hours if a weekend is involved. But they're not going to hold on to the thing for 2 or 3 weeks, as they say. I couldn't find any hidden fees. They didn't admit to any hidden fees. So much for that. Bonus, this is what else you can get with Square. You can get a website. Square originally started out building websites, I believe, and then they kind of morphed into all these other areas. So if you don't have a website, or if you are struggling with your website, take a look at Square. You can start off with, I think, $29 a month. It may be $24 a month. And honestly, they're not bad websites. Not bad at all. They have various templates that you can choose from, and you don't need to be a computer programmer to get started. We'll probably do another podcast episode just on setting up a website with some of these website builders, but Square would certainly be one to consider. My general impression of Square, pretty positive. I had to use a chat room to actually get a phone number to call them. It wasn't front and center on the website. And I know that that's kind of a geezer thing. You know, older people like to talk. Younger people like to type. If you've ever seen me type, it's painful, as my children say. So I really do like to talk to another human about something like this. Their website's pretty good. It's better than most. I couldn't say it's perfect. And overall, I think Square's good. It works. Now, another term that you may hear is EMV. That refers to that little chip that is in a card, and EMV stands for EuroPay, MasterCard, and Visa. Europe was much quicker to credit card security than the U.S. was, and so we actually adopted their technology into the U.S. So whenever you're reading on some of these websites, you'll come across that term EMV. That's what it refers to, is that little chip or the dip. The second one I'd like to talk about is Shopify Lite. Now, Shopify is a very large organization. They do a lot. Primarily, they are a website builder that specializes in e-commerce. You could also use Shopify for building a website and creating a store and selling directly to your customers. But they do have a product called Shopify Lite. You have to kind of look for it. It's a little buried. But again, like Square, you download an app, put it on your cell phone, you get a free reader, and you go to town. Except they do charge $9 a month. And according to their website, right now they are sold out of chip readers. Now that might be for retail. If you signed up for the account, they have some in the back room. They'll send one to you. Otherwise, they have another chip reader on their site that's $49, but it only works with the iOS operating system or Apple. The one that they have sold out of works with both Apple and Android. So you need to check to make sure before you sign on the dotted line. Again, to get started with Shopify Lite, go to their webpage and click on pricing, and then click on Shopify Lite. It's a little buried. Or probably an easier way is just Google Shopify Lite, and that should pop right up. When are your funds available? Well, I'm assuming the same thing, 24/36 hours. If it's a weekend, I couldn't find any fees listed. And a big bonus, just like with Square, you can also send invoices. So if you're working in a shop and you're going to bill somebody, you can use this platform to create an invoice and email that to someone. I have been doing that for probably the last couple years because I'm too lazy to print out the invoice and find an envelope and then find a stamp. Yeah, you remember those things, and take it to the mailbox. It's just, I'm just going to email it. And you know something? Your customers want that too. And the other bonus with Shopify is for $29 a month, you can build your website and your e-commerce store there. Not a bad deal. And of course, that $29 would also include the point of sale system. So you can do your craft shows, your art shows, and take payment in your shop. Somebody comes in to pick up their project, maybe their furniture repair, and they hand you a credit card. You pull out your cell phone, grab the card reader, put the two together, boom, easy peasy. So my general impression of Shopify, I have to admit, their customer service is pretty sucky. I tried to talk to someone from Shopify, and it was impossible. There's a little form that you fill out that a salesperson will get in touch with you. Nada. Haven't heard a word. The website is kind of okay, but it tends to be circular. It just kind of wraps you around and doesn't give you any details. I really want to like Shopify. I'm not going to not recommend them, but that's kind of my impression. I dealt with them a number of years ago, actually talked to a human on a phone back then, and all of that's gone. Maybe they've just gotten, big and cold like so many good businesses tend to do. Next on our list is Squarespace, which I mentioned before. It's a website builder. However, for their POS system, Squarespace uses, that's right, Square. So, I don't know, unless there's something on Squarespace that really attracts you for building a website, if you're just looking for the POS, I would stay with the POS on Square because that's where you're going to end up anyway. Okay, it's time for another definition. When you're doing your research, you may come across the initials PCI DSS. What in the world does that stand for? Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard. This was something that was established, I believe, in the mid-2000s when all of those big store websites were being hacked. Target was a huge one, TJ Maxx. There was a ton of them that were getting hacked. Data was being stolen, and the industry kind of came up with this PCI DSS. It is a system, a set of rules, regulations, suggested guidelines that anyone who handles someone else's credit card must comply with. And this is I guess it's a government organization. It might be through Homeland Security. I'm not positive about that, but you don't mess with this, because if you are taking other people's credit card information and you are not safeguarding it properly and somebody hacks in and steals that, you are on the hook for like thousands and thousands of dollars in fines. When I was doing some web development for an organization, I got in there and found that, yeah, their database is just sitting there wide open. It was behind a firewall, but those aren't terribly hard to breach. And it was just sitting there. The first thing I did, no more data. Just move that away. To go through and get certified, compliant is so arduous. If you're a big company like Target, you can hire people to do that. If you're a small organization, you cannot. You don't want to be exposed to that liability. And likewise, if you are making stuff in your shop and selling it, you don't want to be exposed to that liability. Do not keep and store people's credit card information, period. Let someone else do that. Hence, all of these third-party processors that we're talking about today who are offering a point-of-sale software system. Let them assume that liability. They have the deep pockets. They have the expertise to be PCI DSS compliant. So I just thought I'd throw that out there. You'll see that term. Most people have no idea what that is, but it is a good system. Okay, this podcast is starting to run a little long, and I promised that I was going to try to do shorter ones, so we're going to go ahead and wrap this one up, and we will continue this next week. I have a few more vendors that I would like to talk about, and I will include my top pick of all of these vendors we've discussed, and other forms of payment that you could be accepting. Best tips for your craft show? I think one that I was unaware of, because I honestly haven't done a craft show in the last few years. All of your prices should end in a 5 or a 0. You don't have to deal with $1 bills. And I had told you in the previous podcast that you go to your bank, you get a till of, 20s and 10s and 5s and 1s, no coin. But now it seems to be the trend is to just eliminate the 1s altogether and price everything with, $5, $10, $15, so on and so forth. If that fits your model, your prices for your products, I think that's a great idea. The other tip was have a sign someplace in your booth that you do accept debit and credit cards. And typically you can get the little sign for MasterCard or Visa, just a little plastic thing that you can set down. Ask your vendor. I'm sure that they would be able to provide those to you. Or maybe you could make something creative out of wood. Recommendations for the week? I didn't do a real deep dive into a lot of YouTube videos. I'm sure that there's a ton out there. The one website that I found that seemed to be kind of reputable was Nerd Wallet. Link in the show notes. It was informative. There's a lot of different links that it can take you to different resources. A lot of these websites, if you just Google POS system for craft shows, the more specific you are in your search term, the better the result you're going to get. If you just Google POS system, you're going to get a lot of the merchant account in the results. So kind of drill down and you'll find better results. A lot of these are basically clickbait pages that kind of fake review. Our number one pick is the company that paid us the most money to build this website for them. So that type of thing. So be a little leery on what you're getting. Missed jobs. Wow, I had a lot this week. I felt horrible for turning these down. One lady needed a new set of drawers for their cabinet. They got a new range top in her kitchen, and now they can actually have drawers under that range top. I don't have time to build that. Another lady called about refinishing some wood paneling that she has in her home. I would love to do that. I have the tools to do that. I don't have the time to do that. And a unique one in our city, they've renamed some streets, and that has caused businesses or organizations to change some of their signage. And this one organization had a wood sign that needs the old address wiped out and the new street name put in. I don't think I'm going to be able to get to that, but that's just an idea of some of the work that's out there. Anyway, I want to thank you for tuning in. I hope you found this informative and helpful. Please send any, comments, criticisms, corrections to me at roger@woodworking.com, or of course you can give me a call, 812-325-9823. I heard from several of you this week. Wonderful to talk to you, kind of pick your brain as much as you're picking my brain. I do appreciate it. So until next episode, happy woodworking.